Okay, so as you can see here, I have, let me back this up one step. Okay, so I've already done the live paint. Okay, I've done the live paint. I've also, to all of my different components. Okay, so I have a solid color on everything that you can see here. One thing that I would recommend is if your objects are grouped, always try to make sure they're as ungrouped as much as possible. When you have like a group with inside of a group with inside of a group, which sometimes AutoCAD, when you export it, depending on how things are grouped in your file, it can do that sometimes. So if you notice that something is not working right, make sure that you don't have a tremendous amount of groups in your files. So having the one, pardon me?
You want to group it in AutoCAD?
No, you can ungroup it here. So if I click on it right here, right now this is all grouped. If I right click, I can click on ungroup, okay? All right, and now it's starting to, it's allowing me to select all of the different objects in my file, okay? So that's good, that's what I want. So right now, if I want to add my layer mask to all of my windows, let's go through some of that process. So I'm going to click on my first color, and I'm going to go over to Select, Same, Fill Color, okay? And I have all of those different objects selected. So earlier I was hitting Make Mask, but it wasn't making a mask for all of the objects that I wanted to. I forgot one thing. If I go over to Object, I now want to go over to Compound Path, Make. Okay, that's going to add all of those into one. They're basically one object now, okay? But they're all kind of grouped together, but they're all one path, okay? So from here, I can now hit Make Mask. That worked the way that I wanted it to work earlier in the class. Okay, so from here, I can click on that mask. Okay, I'm going to click on that mask, and now I can add my sky. So I'm going to go to File, Place, Sky, Insert, and that worked. That worked the way that I originally wanted it to. Okay, so that looks good. I'm going to maybe reduce the opacity of that 50%. Okay, so it's a nice soft reflection. All right, so that looks good. So I am going to, let's see, I'm going to hide, actually I'm going to turn off this layer for just a second while I continue to add other details to my project. So I'm going to go over to Window, let's turn on my layer, and let's see, there is my, actually let me try something here. So that's the layer for my opacity mask. Okay, so that looks good. Okay, does everyone see how I did that? Good. Okay, so that's the path that or the step that I missed last time was the adding the compound path. Okay, that groups all of those objects into one object. Okay. I'll probably think of something else to tell you here in just a few seconds too. So after you add the layer mask, okay, and you've imported the image onto whatever object that you're making, if you go over to, you'll notice that if you go over to your layers, so I click on layers, all right, you may not see all of the layers. That's because you still have the compound path activated. If I click on that compound path that we just created, you're going to want to click on Release Compound Path. Okay, so right now it's all selected together. I'm going to click on Release Compound Path, and then now if I go up to my layers, I can see all of my layers again. Okay, so from here I can start to add additional details. All right, so maybe I want to add some kind of a material to my siding here. All right, so I'm going to again go over to Select, Same, Fill Color. All right, it's going to select all of those objects. So what would be the next step from here? If I want to add a texture to this, we're going to add a compound path, then make the mask. Okay, it's a very step-by-step thing. I know it's tricky. Even myself, I lose track sometimes of where I am in the process. But yes, it is a very process-driven exercise. So as soon as you've selected all of your color groupings, you're going to go over to Object, and you're going to go down to Compound Path, Make. And then from here, I can now make a mask. Okay? And then I'm going to decide, okay, what do I want as my texture for this? All right, well, one thing that I have already done here, in my case, I still have all of the horizontal lines on my building face. So I've already kind of determined it's some kind of something with horizontal lines. If I wanted to, I could delete all of those horizontal lines and just work with the actual groupings of space. If you want to have a little bit more freedom in terms of materiality, I could add something like brick to it. Actually, let's just try brick. You're still going to see these lines here, but technically you should be able to select them and alter them if you want to. But let's find a brick texture. All right, so I'm going to go over to Creative Commons. Oh, already there, good. And let's type in brick.
How come you don't just go to Flickr?
Because Creative Commons is a grouping of images that are available for use that are not licensed.
Okay.
So you never know. You could actually go to Flickr and find images that are licensed. But
Okay.
the nice thing about Creative Commons is that people have said we're okay with you using these. We're not going to sue you. Exactly. I mean, we're not going to run into that problem in this class anyways. But should you want to actually use these professionally, you can do that. So I'm going to type in brick texture seamless. Okay, seamless because does anyone have I talked about this before? It's the seamless textures. A seamless texture is basically a texture that when you mirror it or when you actually take it and you start to tile it side by side, they connect to each other. Okay, so that there's not basically a border around every single image that you add. Okay, so if I draw a little image here on the screen, if you have like a half brick here, a full brick here, full brick, and then you have a half brick, those would line up if you were to tile them. Does that make sense as it being seamless? Otherwise, it'll look really funny. So, okay, here's actually a really cool brick. It's nice and gray and it's very trendy right now. So let's click on that, and that's gonna fit my gray building just perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and download this. Oops. Joanna, oh my gosh, don't even get with me with Joanna Gaines. I actually really like her work. My wife, God, loves her. Loves her. All right, so I'm gonna download that image. They're just good people too, which is what I like about them.
I mean,
For what we know,
we know.
from what the television shows. Oh, they live in Texas.
seems like
Everyone from Texas
seems like
is
good people,
is
and possible.
great. So I can now go to File, Place, all right, because we've already created the compound path. I'm going to add the brick, okay. Oh, let's see here. Let me go back. I did one thing wrong. So here's my compound path. I then need to click on the opacity mask over here. Okay, so I'm clicking on the opacity mask, and I'm going to go to File, Place, and add the brick. All right, see how that's now added to the actual, only the areas that I had selected. Okay, so I can make the image bigger. All right, I may have to, I'm going to distort this just a little bit. You probably won't be able to tell. The other thing that I could do is I could tile this. Right now, the other thing that I'm thinking about is the size of the texture. So I don't want my bricks so large that they look like they're 3 feet long. I don't want them to look like they're 2 inches long. Okay, so when I was talking about tiling the texture, what I would actually do is take this image and I'm going to copy and paste it. Okay, and there we go. We now have 2 of those images just side by side. All right, so that looks nice. All right, and then from here, I like that. So I'm going to click on, let's see, this looks good. I'm going to go ahead and click over, right click. Let's see, I just did this a second ago. Let's see, let me move this over here. Just did this a second ago. Range, let's see, that looks good. Select isolated image. Nope, let's see. Okay, so we're good. So I just double clicked off of my screen and I'm now able to make some of those adjustments. All right, so I just want to make sure that all of my layers are still active. Go to layers. Okay, that looks good. But you can see here that I'm starting to get some real nice texture to all of my elevations. Okay, if you wanted to take it a step further, you could start to add shadows. I'm not going to make you do that for this assignment. We'll actually do this a little bit more in Photoshop because we can get a lot more realistic effects. We can dodge and burn the areas, have nice gradients. But if you wanted to add a shadow, I could go over to my pen tool, and let's say the sun's coming from this direction. All right, so let's add a shadow over here. All right, that looks good. So I'm going to take that line that I just created. I don't want a stroke on it, so I'm going to click on my stroke, no stroke. But what I do want is a fill. So I'm going to double click on that fill. Let's make it really dark gray. Whoops. The tricky part about this is because there's so many lines on this screen right now, it's really hard not to connect to other lines. So let's look at how we might fix that. So I'm actually going to start by drawing this shadow up here. I'm just going to bring it down. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow, like so. That looks good. Let's make this black or dark gray. I'm going to remove my stroke, okay, and I'm going to add an opacity to it. So it's only going to be a shadow if you can see all the texture behind it. So I'm going to say that's like 50%, maybe even it's less, like 30%. All right, and from here I can place it on my screen. Okay, so here's my shadow. Okay, that looks good, and I'm going to stretch it so that it fills this space. Okay, everybody see how I did that? So that starts to look good. It's starting to give some, some additional depth to this image. I can continue to add some shadow to, below my.
Is the brick thickness the same as the siding thickness?
Is the brick thickness the same as the siding thickness?
Horizontal lines.
I thought I saw the horizontal lines matching the joint.
Oh, you know what? Well, right now the horizontal lines are so light gray that you just can't see them. So, which is actually good. I don't think I was that clever. But let's see. Let's continue. I'm going to use my eyedropper tool. Let's select this shape. You can see here that I can continue to add shadows if you want to. You don't have to, but it's just additional detail. So one thing that you're going to see on Canvas, though, it asks you to add text to your drawing. So as soon as you have done this to all of your elevations, okay, you're going to want to add some text. So that was the final part of Canvas. All right, so if you go over to Assignments, and you go down to Exercise 25, the last portion is to add text and annotations, okay? You can find some text and some bar scales and some of those little details by clicking on this link. There's a little zip file of a bunch of little objects you can use. Okay, if you want to create your own, you can do that too, but I'm just giving you basically some that so you don't have to go out and find them. So some of the details that I'm looking, or some of the details that I'm going to be looking for is you're going to want to add a ground plane. So I might go over here and I'm going to add a ground plane to my elevation, all right? And I'm going to want to add some titles, all right? So this is my north elevation. So let's call this north elevation. Let's see, so let's say north elevation. All right, I'm going to select all of that. Let's make it, let's see, where's my text? None of the layers that I want, none of the tools that I want are activated. Let's see. Type, so I'm going to click on type. And character. Okay, so there's my little tool palette that I was looking for. So let's make this a lot bigger. Maybe this is like 40. Let's go even bigger. Let's go 60. All right, so here's the north elevation. All right, maybe I do something a little interesting here. I'm going to make this all white. All right, and I'm going to place it on top of my fill. Okay, so north elevation. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing for all 4 of my elevations. Add your color or add your colors and your different textures as you wish to both your floor plans and all of your elevations. And you'll also need to label them accordingly. Okay, I can continue to add additional details. I could add the scale. So what did we plot these at? Like quarter, if I remember correctly. All right, so I'm going to change this back to black. All right, and I'm going to say a 1/4 inch is equal to 1 foot. All right, let's make this a lot smaller. Let's make this like 21. That's fine. And I'm going to place that right here. Okay, so I have a scale. I have a name to my elevation. All right, and let's add a graphic scale. So earlier I showed you that you could download this right here. So if you download that, it's going to give us a zip file that has that has all of these different scales in them. So if I double click on it, I'm going to click on title blocks and scales, Illustrator, and oh look, there we go, right there, 1/4 inch scale. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. All right, there's my 1/4 inch scale. I'm just going to copy it into this file. All right, and then when you copy it in, it will already be to scale. So do not make it smaller or larger, otherwise the graphic scale will no longer be accurate. Okay, so I'm going to place that, we'll say right here. Okay, and that's typically what you would do in a work environment. So if I'm going to submit some nice design level drawings, I'm going to have my elevation, I'm going to have a nice ground plane. I made this kind of a little bit more graphic-y in terms of how I labeled it. I'm going to have my scale and my graphic scale. Okay, so those are kind of the different objects that I'm expecting of you for this exercise. And as soon as you're done, go ahead and just save it as a PDF and upload it to Canvas. Questions? It's kind of a big exercise, but you have till Monday. All right, you still have another hour today, and we'll work on it on Monday as well.